From episode 15, 16, and now 17, Vikings is constantly pumping out high action, high intensity, very good episodes. We've had amazing relationships built up with powerful death scenes and really good movement on those plot lines we actually care about. So let's start with this episode begins with Alfred waking up. So Alfred storms into the room, seeing Aethelred's dead body with this white coat over it and everyone around him. He's still hazed from coming out of this coma and very confused what's going on. Judith, knowing they're in public, immediately throws out the pretty poor excuse that he just happened to fall over and die and no one knows what happened. She's also extremely overwhelmed with emotions because she just killed one of her sons and the other one was in a coma and it wasn't coming out. And so if he died from that sickness, she would have no sons left and killed one of them for no reason whatsoever, leaving England without a king and blood on her hands for no reason. I did enjoy the scene we got between Judith and Aethelred's wife where she kind of sees right through what Judith has done and is so sickened by the actual fact that she could pull that off. That scene kind of gives us an indication of how cold she is to Aethelred's death, but it's the next scene with Alfred that really shows us how her character is so much more brutal and controlling than we ever thought. Like, she's never held back before, but this is a new level. She looks Alfred in the eyes and admits to everything. And then when he gets angry, when he trashes the room around him, which is like bare minimum response, she mocks and shames him. It was so interesting to see Judith run rings around Alfred. At first, she's playing defensive and trying to cater to his whims, saying, oh, he was going to betray you, I had to do it. But then when his emotions take over, she sees the moment to strike when he's most vulnerable, when he's literally like curled up on a ball almost, his head over the table. She takes the high ground and makes him play defensive. Everything in this scene was done so well, from the camera work to the physicality of the scene, where she grabs the face, brings him closer, has her voice low, raises it up, goes to a raspy whisper, stands over him, moves around the table. Everything was just done so well. And then she goes into that monologue about how he can't behave like a normal person, react like a normal person. It was so powerful and really shows us that Vikings doesn't want to show Judith as a likable character at all. She has Alfred under her control. She knows how to manipulate him, and it will be a really big part of this season for him to try and get over that, to gain his independence and push out her influence. It's clear now that Alfred can never fully assume his position as king if he doesn't stop being a man-child and a mother's boy. Judith is a bad influence who will bring down his reign if he's not careful. So lastly, in England, we find out that a Danish Viking army is heading to Essex. So Alfred calls in his good buddy pal Ober to see what men he can bring and ask for any advice. He also informs Ober that there are 1,000 troops less than the Danish are, which makes the chance of them winning very low. Alfred assumes he'll ride at the head of the army like he did last time and inspire the troops to fight better. But Ober knows that even if they have the best commanders in the world, having a third less troops is very difficult to come back from. So they need to have someone the Vikings will actually be afraid to fight. A son of Ragnar. Having the Northmen fight with them or for them is one thing, but having them lead the forces and make all of decisions in battle is another thing entirely. Alfred accepting this deal and putting Ober in charge is another big leap in trust. And the way we see Ober push back and make this demand also shows how their relationship has grown to a more equal status now that Ober has land and the authority to make proper decisions. So we'll continue to see Alfred and Ober's relationship grow into the next episode as he steps up his actions a lot more and takes more responsibility for the protection of England. You can check out my preview breakdown here for the next episode if you want to learn more. So now we move across to this really interesting dynamic between Harald, Bjorn, and this new love interest. They're clearly forming this quite interesting love triangle between the three of them, where Harald's kind of relationship with her is more built on ambition and him trying to find that love he could never really get, while Bjorn has had love a lot in his life, but it's never really felt that real to him, and they've all ended very tragically. So Harald and Bjorn make another arrangement where Bjorn will become king, and after Bjorn dies, Harald will inherit the throne. Now Bjorn is making a lot of incentives for Harald to try and kill him after this battle. 1, he'll become king, 2, he'll free up the wife, and 3, just for fun. One of my favourite shots for this section was when Bjorn walked away and he kind of came to this close up of his face. He's like, "You'll have your ships, Bjorn Ironside," and his eyes like light up. As I've said for a while now, Harald is being one of the strongest characters this season, and that's not changed this episode, and there's clearly going to be so much more from him as well, especially as his love triangle builds up, and as they sail back to Norway to fight IVAR. So this episode focused mainly on the relationship part of Bjorn's storyline, but we definitely will be getting action between those guys very soon. Alright, so I really enjoyed all of the Ivar stuff we got, whether it was with Viksid and all of this authoritarian Hitler-esque kind of thing we're doing here. Like I've saying for a while now that Ivar's been building himself up as this like god emperor dictator type thing, and then definitely not slowing that down at all this episode. Like the way the entire thing was shot made him look like an evil villain. The way they used the different fire and lighting, the way the crowd reacted to what he said, what he was actually saying, I was like, don't worry about those small things like murder inquiries and sharing power, whatever that is. Just let me protect you, give me all of the position of power, because I have your best interests at heart. And then we had that really cheeky bit when he's talking about the different traitors you could have around you, maybe your neighbor or your family or your brother, staring right at Viksid. So it seems like they're finally going to start moving to the final stages of this conflict between Viksid and Ivar. So Ivar shows up in the night, creepy as hell, sitting right next to him. They have this big back and forward where Ivar finally decides to send him out of Kattegat to get rid of him. But Viksid's storyline is not going to slow down. This is going to be the start of him really becoming his own character and choosing to go fully against Ivar and make his own path. And maybe we'll begin to see what that thing the seer was talking about would be. The thing that everyone else failed at that he will succeed. I'd love to hear what you guys think that will be and what you think the future of Viksid's storyline will be, as well as what your thoughts on this entire conflict we've had between Ivar and him, and how you see Ivar growing into this very authoritarian figure. Like at this point, Ivar's one state-run famine away from being a full-on dictator. So now we move to Iceland, which was actually the biggest single section of this entire episode. This episode was called The Most Terrible Thing, and this seemed to be what it was referring to. Like, they wanted to show us how a beast could come out in every type of man, and this actor really showed us that. He really went from zero to hero real quick. At first I was surprised how quickly he switched, but then I realized they had planned this for such a long time, and my mind went to the same kind of shock mode that I went into every single time something tragic happened in Game of Thrones. Like when the Red Wedding started happening around you, you just froze. You're just watching things spiral out of control as you see this heavily planned and brutal event take place with no power to stop it. The way they had Floki in the scene and he was held back with a knife and couldn't do anything, he was just in his own mind, shaking, not understanding how this could happen, that was us, the viewer. We wanted to do something so desperate to step in to stop this tragedy from occurring, but we couldn't. Now, I've been criticizing this Iceland story from the start, but this has made up for a lot of the slow pace. Like, as much as I didn't like what was happening in the events, they had me so emotionally invested in the characters, and that is a success by any metric. Like, my heart was pounding when they brought Helgi in front of Floki, and he talks to me, he's like, I want to live, tell them that I've done nothing wrong, I was always on their side. But nothing he can say, nothing Floki can say, can change this horrible event. So Avon is dead, Helgi is dead, the brother is dead, the mother is dead, all of the other ones are dead, and Floki is destroyed. The sister finds out when they come back and just can't handle it, and throws herself off a cliff. She was the one that held the dream the longest of this land. She was the one that really backed Floki from the start and always believed in the settlement. And now, even she can't handle it. I'd love to hear what you guys think about Iceland. Do you think this entire build-up to this tragic event was worth it? Where do you see Vikings taking Iceland from here on out, now that most of the characters are dead, and those that remain are like killers? Tell me your thoughts on that below, as well as anything else in this episode. Overall, I was very happy with this episode. It continued the string that we've had for the last 3 or so that have been very, very strong. The plot's been high stakes and moving really fast, and all of the characters across the board, whether it's Bjorn, Alfred, Ober, any of them, have developed really well. We're getting so much more with Viksid and Ivar, and I can't wait to see where Vikings take this season, because if they carry on at this pace, as every episode is as good as the last ones we've had, this season might top the ranks, even without Ragnar. But please do tell me what you guys think, because maybe I have rose-tinted glasses on, and you need to rip them off and tell me the truth. Other than that, SKOL.